The conclave called it tradition, but everyone who had ever watched it knew it was a weapon. The trial of strength was held on a polished ring of black stone inside a chamber the size of a stadium. Above it, thousands of seats climbed up like steps cut into a cliff. The seats were filled with beings from hundreds of worlds, tall, short, scaled, feathered, glowing, armored, soft-bodied, sharp-edged. Some wore ceremonial robes, some wore military badges, some wore nothing at all, their bodies already announcing rank. In the center of the ring stood a single platform made of pale metal. It looked harmless. It was not. The conclave had discovered Earth only 11 cycles ago. At first, they had called humans small primates and gravity-bound mammals and late arrivals. Then they studied human history. Then they listened to human broadcasts. Then they watched humans fight each other, forgive each other, rebuild, and repeat it again. Humanity did not make sense to them, so they scheduled the trial. The trial was supposed to do one thing, tell the conclave where a new species belonged in the food chain of the galaxy. The rules were simple. A species sent a champion. The conclave tested that champion with pressure, fear, and pain. If the champion broke, the species was marked as weak. If the champion endured, the species was marked as dangerous. Either way, the conclave learned what it needed. On the day of the trial, the air in the chamber carried a faint taste of metal. It was the kind of taste humans would have called electricity. Hidden fields hummed through the walls, quiet and patient, like a predator holding still. In a private corridor behind the arena, Elia's ward walked toward the gates that led to the ring. He did not look like the kind of person the galaxy expected to represent a world. He was not tall by conclave standards. He was not muscular in a way that stood out next to soldiers. His hair was clipped short, more practical than stylish. His face was plain, the kind people forgot 2 minutes after meeting him. He wore a simple gray suit with a small Earth emblem on the chest and a translator band around his neck. His hands were steady, but not because he felt brave. They were steady because he had spent most of his life doing tasks that needed steady hands. 2 members of the human delegation walked with him. Admiral Sato, sharp-eyed and rigid, carried the weight of Earth's military reputation on her shoulders. Dr. Miriam Chen, the lead xenopsychologist, looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. She kept watching Elias like she was trying to read his thoughts from the angle of his jaw. "You can still say no," Dr. Chen told him for the 3rd time. Elias kept walking. "If I say no, someone else goes." "Yes," she said. "Someone trained for this." Elias gave a small, tired smile. "That's the point." Admiral Sato's voice was low and tight. "Ward, once you step onto that platform, we cannot stop it. They will interpret intervention as failure." "I know," Elias said. He knew more than they thought. He had read the conclave files. He had watched the old recordings. He had seen champions from other worlds collapse, screaming, clawing at their own faces as invisible forces crushed their bodies and minds. He had seen conclave officials speak politely afterward, offering guidance and protection to the newly humbled species. Protection that looked a lot like control. Elias was not a hero. He was a logistics officer. His job on Earth had been moving supplies through broken cities after storms, keeping food lines steady during shortages, finding fuel when nothing was available, making sure people got medicine even when roads were gone. He had lived through days when nothing worked and people still needed him to make it work. He had been chosen because of one sentence in Dr. Chen's report. Humans did not only survive danger, humans survived endurance. The conclave gates rose ahead, tall and curved, engraved with symbols that meant honor and judgment and balance. 2 conclave guards waited there. They were huge, plated in dark armor that looked grown, not built. Their heads were narrow and their eyes were pale. Their rifles were ceremonial but real. One of the guards spoke in a slow, formal tone. The translator band shifted the sound into basic English. "Champion of Terra, confirm your intent to stand the trial." Elias stopped. For a moment he heard his own breathing. He thought about Earth, not the flags, not the speeches, the kitchens with cheap lights, the crowded trains, the children in broken shoes, the people who held doors open anyway, the way humans complained and then did the work. He nodded. "I confirm." The guard stepped aside. The gates opened with a deep sound like stone grinding against stone. Light poured in, noise followed. As Elias walked out into the arena, the sound hit him like a wave. Thousands of voices layered together, not words mostly, reactions, curiosity, mockery, excitement, fear. Somewhere high above, a conclave announcer spoke in a language that sounded like chimes. The translator band caught enough to produce meaning. "Behold the champion of Terra. Let the trial reveal the truth of their strength." Elias stepped onto the ring. The black stone under his shoes felt cold, even through the soles. The air smelled sharp and clean, like a hospital corridor. He could feel the attention of the crowd pressing on him like heat. Across the ring, he saw the conclave council. They sat on a raised platform, surrounded by floating lights. Their bodies were different shapes, but their faces had the same expression, controlled interest, like people watching an experiment. A thin figure stood and raised one hand. Its skin was pale blue and its eyes were dark and reflective. It wore a mantle that shimmered like oil on water. "Terra," it said through the translator, "your species claims dignity among equals. The trial will test that claim. You will face no blades, no guns, no toxins. Only what you already carry within you." Elias swallowed. His mouth was dry. A panel in the stone slid open beside him. A small device rose from it like a flower opening. It was a ring of metal with tiny lights around its edge. A soft voice spoke near his ear, calm and artificial. "Please stand on the platform. Place both feet inside the circle. Do not step out." He walked forward and stood inside the ring. The metal looked harmless. But when he shifted his weight, he felt a faint vibration, like standing on a bridge with traffic passing. "Phase 1, the council figure announced. "Gravity." Elias did not have time to brace. The world became heavy. It was not like someone pushing down on his shoulders. It was like the universe decided his bones should be made of stone. His knees bent hard, his spine compressed. The air itself seemed thicker. He sucked in a breath, and it felt like he was pulling it through water. The crowd quieted a little. The conclave watched. Elias fought to keep his feet planted. His legs shook. His heart hammered. He felt pressure behind his eyes, as if his skull wanted to fold inward. He had trained in high gravity for this. Not much, but enough to know the trick. Do not panic. Do not fight the weight like it is an enemy. Let it settle. Find a posture that wastes less energy. He spread his feet slightly. He lowered his center of balance. He breathed slow, even though every breath was a struggle. The platform's voice spoke again. "Gravity level 3 times Terra standard. Adjusting." The pressure increased again. Elias almost dropped to a knee. His hands twitched as if to catch himself. He forced them to stay at his sides. He focused on one simple goal: do not fall. His mind flashed to a memory of carrying water jugs up 6 flights of stairs during a blackout, sweat pouring down his back, legs burning, people waiting above with dry mouths. He had thought then, "I cannot do this." Then he had done it anyway because stopping had not been an option. He thought now, same idea. The crowd murmured. Some of them sounded confused. Others sounded disappointed, as if they expected the human to collapse sooner. Up on the council platform, one of the council members leaned toward another, whispering. Elias could not hear the words, but he could see the shift in posture. Interest sharpened. The platform voice continued. "Gravity level 4 times Terra standard." Elias' vision narrowed. His lungs felt small. His muscles burned in places he didn't know could burn. His teeth pressed together hard. He tasted iron. He wobbled, and for a second it felt like the stone would swallow him. He did not flinch. Not because it didn't hurt, but because flinching wasted energy. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it came out like a rough breath. The thought in his head was not heroic. It was annoyed. Of course they start with this. The platform voice paused, almost as if it was listening. "Subject remains upright, increasing difficulty." Elias wanted to swear. He didn't. He breathed. Then something changed. It wasn't heavier. It was different. The arena lights shifted, dimming around the edges of his vision. A cold sensation crawled over his skin. The hair on his arms rose. "Phase 2, the council figure announced. "Presence." Elias blinked. The world did not look different. But it felt like a giant shadow had fallen over him. Like something vast and hungry was standing behind him, close enough that he could feel its breath. The crowd had gone nearly silent. Even alien bodies, even alien minds, knew what this phase did. It reached into instincts older than language. It told the body, "There is a predator and you are prey." Elias' stomach tightened. His throat wanted to close. A fear rose up in him so fast it felt like a trap snapping shut. He remembered Dr. Chen's warning. "This part will not be logical. Your brain will invent reasons. It will show you images. It will make you certain you are about to die." Elias' knees shook harder. He felt sweat run down his temple. The pressure behind his eyes grew worse. And then the images came. He saw Earth from orbit blue and bright. Then he saw it burn. He saw cities become ash. He saw people screaming. He saw a child reaching for him, small hands stretched out. He knew it wasn't real. That did not stop his body from reacting. His chest seized. His heartbeat slammed so hard it hurt. The predator presence pressed down, not with weight but with meaning. It said, "You cannot win." It said, "You are small." It said, "You should drop to the ground and show your throat." Elia's hands curled into fists. His arms trembled. He almost moved, not to run. He couldn't run. The gravity pinned him. His body wanted to do the only thing left, surrender. Then another memory pushed through the fear. A storm shelter in Karachi during a flood mission. People packed tight, water rising outside. A woman crying because her father hadn't made it in time. Elias sitting against a wall, exhausted, holding a flashlight for 2 hours because the generator had died and darkness made panic worse. He had been scared then, too. He had felt helpless. He had not flinched then either, because if he flinched, other people would break. He stared straight ahead now, eyes watering, jaw shaking. The images got worse. They always did. The trial was designed that way. He saw Admiral Sato's face, disappointed. He saw Dr. Chen turning away. He saw headlines calling humanity weak. He saw conclave ships in Earth's sky. His mind tried to reject it. His body tried to believe it. Elias forced his breathing into a slow pattern. In for 3, out for 4. It was not magic, it was a rope. The predator presence pressed harder, and then under the fear he noticed something. It was not just fear, it was a message, a performance, a tool. It was trying to make him feel small. Elia's lips parted slightly. A breath left him, shaky but steady enough. The thought formed, quiet and stubborn. "You don't get to decide what I am." He did not shout it, he did not pose, he simply held his ground. Up above, a ripple moved through the crowd. Some aliens leaned forward. Some tilted their heads as if the sight did not fit inside their understanding. The platform voice spoke again, with a hint of something like surprise. Subject displays continued resistance, introducing pain amplification. Elias didn't have time to wonder what that meant. Every ache in his body became sharp. The weight in his muscles turned into fire. The strain in his joints turned into knives. The pressure in his skull turned into a scream that had no sound. He gasped, his back arched without permission. His eyes squeezed shut. This was not just pain. It was pain with intelligence. It searched for weak points. It took every small injury he had ever ignored and made it feel like a fresh wound. Elias had an old shoulder tear from lifting crates during an emergency. He had a knee that didn't like cold weather. He had scars, small and large, from a life that had not been gentle. The trial found them all. He made a sound low in his throat, not a scream, more like a growl that he didn't mean to make. His knees buckled a fraction. In the silence of the arena, that tiny movement seemed loud. The conclave council watched like artists watching a painting change color. Elia's vision blurred. Tears ran down his face, pulled sideways by gravity. His lungs struggled. His ribs felt like they were being squeezed. He wanted to fall. He wanted to stop. Then he thought of the title the conclave had used in their own private notes, leaked by one of Earth's allies. A cruel joke passed around by beings who had never lived under Earth's gravity. No alien could break strength. It was not about his body. It was about the idea that resistance was pointless. Elia's mind, burning and shaking, produced a simple answer. Fine, he let the pain exist. He did not argue with it. He did not waste energy wishing it away. It was there, like rain, like heat. Like hunger, he focused on one thing: stay inside the circle. His breath came in short bursts now. His face was wet. His hands trembled. His legs shook so hard it felt like the bones would snap. Still, he remained standing. The platform voice spoke softer. Subject heart rate elevated, neural stress high, probability of collapse rising. Elias opened his eyes. The lights above were blurry. The audience was a smear of colors and shapes, but he could still see the council platform. He could still see the pale blue council figure watching him. Elias looked straight at it. His mouth moved. The translator would pick it up, but his voice was rough, small, almost lost in the air. "Is that all?" A sound moved through the crowd. It was not laughter. It was not applause. It was something closer to disbelief, like 1,000 minds touching the edge of a new idea. The council figure's eyes narrowed. It lifted one hand slightly, and the platform's lights shifted again. "Phase 2 continues," it said, more carefully now. "The trial measures truth, not pride." Elias almost smiled, but the pain made it difficult. Truth, he thought. Yes, here is one. Humans were not unbreakable. They were not gods. They were not immune to fear or pain, they just had practice. He felt the predator presence push again. He felt the pain spike again. He felt gravity grind him down, and he stayed. Not because he believed he would win, because he knew what losing meant for everyone behind him. Somewhere in the delegation area, Dr. Chen's hands were clenched tight. Admiral Sato stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Elia's with something like respect she didn't want to show yet. On the platform, Elia's knees shook harder. His shoulders sagged. His face tightened as he fought against his own body. The trial did not care that he was only one man. The trial did not care about Earth's hopes. It was a machine designed to break a species by breaking a symbol. But Elia's ward had never been a symbol. He had been the person who showed up when things were heavy and ugly and unfair and kept going anyway. The arena lights pulsed. The platform voice spoke again, almost like it was thinking aloud. Subject-response pattern, endurance over aggression, unusual. Elia's hearing had dulled. The words reached him like echoes. Endurance, he thought. Yes, he swallowed. His throat hurt. He took another breath. The crowd watched the human who would not collapse. The conclave watched a result it did not understand. And Elia stood inside the circle, shaking under pressure that could crush warlords, and he did not flinch, not because he felt nothing, but because he had learned long ago that feeling something was not the same as being beaten by it. The trial had more phases, worse phases. It had ways to dig deeper, to pry at the mind, to drag out every fear and regret. Elias did not know how far he could go. He only knew that as long as he was upright, humanity was upright. The platform's lights brightened, and the air in the arena changed again, sharp and cold, like the moment before a storm breaks. The conclave council figure raised its hand. "Proceed," it said. And Elia's ward, plain and exhausted and stubborn, took another breath and held his ground as the trial prepared to become something much more personal. The pressure did not stop when the council figure said, "Proceed." If anything, it became more focused. Elias felt it first in his head. Not pain exactly, not like before. This was sharper, more precise, like fingers pressing on specific thoughts. The weight on his body remained heavy, crushing, but now something else slid underneath it, quiet and invasive. The arena lights dimmed further. The black stone beneath his feet seemed farther away, as if the world had stretched. The platform's voice spoke steady and neutral. Phase 3 initiated, cognitive stress and memory exposure. Elia's breath caught. He had known this was coming. He had read about it. This phase had ended more trials than any other. Bodies could endure for a time, but minds were fragile. The conclave believed that truth lived in memory. Dig deep enough and everyone broke. The crowd leaned forward. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with careful interest, like scientists waiting for a reaction. The first memory hit without warning. Elias was 8 years old, standing in a narrow hallway that smelled like old paint and damp carpet. His parents were arguing in the kitchen. Not shouting yet, but sharp voices clipped words. He stood still, holding a toy truck in his hand, afraid to move because movement might make them notice him. His chest tightened. The memory was clear, too clear. He could hear the hum of the refrigerator. He could feel the rough carpet under his bare feet. Then it twisted. The voices grew louder. The walls seemed to lean in. His parents' words turned into accusations aimed at him. "You're the reason, you're too much, you make everything harder." Elias gasped. He knew it wasn't real. His parents had never said those things, but the trial did not care about truth. It cared about reaction. The gravity pressed down harder as his heart raced. The predator presence crept closer, feeding on the fear. He clenched his jaw, his fists tightened. Another memory crashed in. He was 22, standing in a ruined warehouse after an earthquake. Dust hung in the air like fog. He could hear people crying somewhere under the rubble. He had a radio in his hand, shouting for silence, for listening. He remembered the weight of concrete on his shoulders as he crawled through a gap too small for comfort. Then the memory shifted. This time, when he reached a trapped man, the man stopped breathing. Elias saw it happen again, slow and helpless. The man's eyes fixed on him, accusing, "You were too slow." Elias' knees shook violently. His breath came out in a broken sound. The crowd reacted. A low murmur spread. Some aliens recognized the pattern now. The trial was digging for guilt. On the council platform, several members watched closely. One of them tapped a claw against the armrest, thoughtful. Elia's mind felt like it was being pulled apart and sorted. The trial did not show random moments. It showed the ones that still hurt. A third memory followed immediately. He was older now, working disaster relief after a flood. He stood on a rooftop with a rope in his hands. Below him, dark water rushed past. A woman clung to a piece of debris, her grip slipping. He threw the rope. It fell short. The trial did not let him throw it again. The woman's hands slipped. She vanished under the water. Elia's throat tightened until he could barely breathe. "No," he whispered, though he didn't know who he was speaking to. The gravity increased a fraction. The pain flared. The predator presence pressed closer, almost pleased. This was where champions usually fell, not because they were weak, but because they cared, because memory was heavier than muscle. Elia's vision blurred. Tears streamed freely now, pulled down by gravity. His shoulders hunched. His body wanted to curl inward to protect itself. The platform's voice spoke calmly. "Subject exhibits emotional overload, stress indicators rising." The council figure raised one hand slightly, not to stop it, to refine it. The memories changed again. Now they came faster, overlapping, faces of people he had helped and failed, names he remembered, names he had tried to forget, moments where he had hesitated, moments where he had chosen wrong because there had been no right choice. The trial whispered a message through them all: "You are not enough." Elia's teeth chattered, his muscles screamed, his head throbbed. He felt small, smaller than he had ever felt before, and then, buried under the weight and noise, another thought surfaced. These memories were real. The pain was real, but he was still here. He had not stopped after those moments. He had gone on. He had carried the weight then, just like he was carrying it now. Elias focused on the memory of the flood again, not the failure. What came after? He remembered standing there long after the woman was gone, hands shaking, rope slack. He remembered another rescuer putting a hand on his shoulder. He remembered going back out the next day, and the next. He remembered that the story did not end at the worst moment. His breathing slowed just a little. The trial noticed. The pressure shifted, probing for another angle. A new memory formed, deeper than the others. Elias was alone in a dark apartment, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. He was exhausted. He hadn't slept in days. His phone lay beside him, silent. He remembered thinking, "I can't do this anymore." The trial leaned into that thought. It showed him a future where he gave up, where he walked away from responsibility, where people waited for help that never came. The predator presence swelled, heavy and cold. The gravity pushed harder. Pain surged through his joints and spine. Elias let out a strained sound, halfway between a breath and a sob. This was the core of it, not fear of death, fear of failing again. The crowd was completely silent now. Even beings who did not understand human emotion felt the intensity of the moment. The trial was no longer a display. It was a struggle. On the council platform, one member shifted uneasily. "The human should be broken," it murmured. Another replied, quieter, "It resists without denial, curious." Elia's head dipped. His chin nearly touched his chest. For a terrifying second, it felt like his knees would finally give out. In that moment, one simple truth cut through the noise. He had never been strong because he won. He had been strong because he stayed. Elias lifted his head again, inch by inch. His neck muscles screamed in protest. His eyes burned. His breath was ragged. "I know," he whispered hoarsely, though his voice barely carried. "I know." The trial pressed harder, as if angry. The memories grew sharper, more painful, but something had changed. Elias was no longer trying to push them away. He was letting them pass through him, one by one. He did not deny the guilt. He did not argue with the regret. Yes, he had failed. Yes, people had suffered. And yes, he was still standing. The platform's voice hesitated. "Subject displays adaptive response, emotional integration observed." The words meant nothing to Elias, but the pause did. The gravity held. The pain remained. The presence loomed. Still he did not fall. Sweat dripped from his hair onto the stone. His suit clung to his body. His arms trembled violently now, muscles near their limit. The council figure leaned forward slightly. "Increase intensity, test conclusion." The air in the arena seemed to thicken. The memories stopped suddenly. For half a second there was nothing. Then came silence, not the silence of peace, the silence of absence. Elias felt it like a whole opening inside him. No images, no pain, no fear, no meaning. The trial had shifted again. "Phase 4, the platform announced softly. "Isolation." The predator presence vanished. The gravity eased slightly, just enough to be noticeable. The pain dulled. Elias almost sagged in relief. Then he realized what was wrong. He felt empty. The arena faded from his awareness. The crowd disappeared. The council platform vanished. He stood alone in a vast gray space that stretched in all directions. No walls, no sky, just flat nothing. His body felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. This was the final weapon of the trial. Not pain, not fear, meaninglessness. A voice spoke, not from outside, but from everywhere, calm, gentle, reasonable. "You struggle," it said. "You endure, for what?" Elias swallowed. His mouth felt dry even in this unreal place. The voice continued. "Your efforts do not save everyone. Your pain does not change outcomes. Your species will fail like all others. Why continue?" Elias searched for anger. There was none. He searched for fear. It felt far away. The voice was persuasive. It sounded logical. Almost kind, he thought of answers he could give: duty, hope, love. They all felt small in this emptiness. His shoulders slumped. This was where many champions stopped responding. They simply stood hollow until the trial ended them. Elias closed his eyes. For a long moment he had nothing. Then slowly something familiar surfaced. Tiredness, not despair, not defeat, just tiredness. He had felt this before, at the end of long days, at the end of long missions, when everything hurt and nothing felt worth it, but morning still came. He opened his eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly. His voice echoed strangely. "I just do." The voice paused. "You accept futility," it said. "That is illogical." Elias gave a weak, crooked smile. "So is quitting." The gray space trembled. The emptiness wavered like heat haze. The arena rushed back in all at once. Sounds slammed into him. Light flared. Gravity surged again, harsher than before. Pain roared back through his body. Elias cried out, unable to stop it this time. His back arched. His fists clenched so hard his nails cut into his palms. But he was there, present, standing. The crowd erupted into noise. Shouts, clicks, hisses, movements of shock and confusion. The trial had never returned someone intact from isolation. On the council platform, several members stood, not in ceremony, in alarm. The platform's voice spoke, no longer perfectly neutral. "Unexpected outcome. Subject maintains self-cohesion." Elias swayed under the renewed weight. His legs felt like they were tearing apart from the inside. His vision flickered at the edges. He did not understand what he had done. He only knew he was still here. Dr. Chen watched from the delegation area, hands shaking. Tears streamed down her face, unnoticed. Admiral Sato's jaw was set tight, her eyes bright. The council figure raised both hands now. "Pause escalation." The platform did not respond immediately. "Pause escalation," the figure repeated, sharper. The pressure eased slightly. Elias gasped, sucking in air like a drowning man breaking the surface. His knees bent deeply, but he forced them to lock again. The trial had not ended, but something fundamental had shifted. The conclave had expected resistance. They had not expected acceptance. The council figure studied Elias carefully. "You do not deny weakness," it said slowly, "yet you persist." Elias looked up, his face pale, eyes bloodshot. He barely understood the words. "I never said I was strong," he rasped. "I just don't stop." Silence fell across the arena. The trial systems hummed, recalculating. Somewhere deep in the conclave's ancient logic, a new problem formed. If strength could not break a human, what could? The lights dimmed again. The air grew colder. The platform's voice spoke, carefully now. "Preparing final assessment." Elias swallowed hard. His body screamed for rest. His mind felt frayed and thin. Still, he stayed inside the circle, because stopping had never been his skill. And the trial, for the first time in its long history, did not know how to proceed. The pause did not feel like mercy. It felt like the moment before something sharp fell. Elias stood inside the circle, shaking so badly that his teeth clicked together. The weight was lighter than before, but only just enough to remind him how heavy it had been. Every muscle in his body burned. His vision came and went in soft pulses, dark at the edges. The arena was quiet again, not the calm kind of quiet, the watching kind. High above, the conclave council conferred in low tones. Their voices overlapped in alien languages, translated only in fragments. Elias could not hear the words clearly, but he could feel the attention. It pressed on him like heat. The trial platform hummed beneath his feet. The device that controlled it rotated slightly, lights shifting color. It was adjusting. "Doctor." Chen leaned forward in the delegation area, her hands clenched so tightly that her knuckles were white. "They're recalibrating," she whispered. Admiral Sato did not reply. Her eyes never left Elias. The council figure raised one long, thin hand. "The subject does not conform," it said, its voice carrying through the chamber. The trial measures dominance, fear response, and will collapse. This human exhibits endurance without escalation. Another council member spoke, its voice rougher. Then escalate beyond endurance. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Elias did not know what they were saying. He only felt the platform shift under him again, like a living thing waking up. The platform's voice returned, quieter than before. Final sequence initiated, integrated exposure. Elias swallowed. His throat hurt. He tried to adjust his stance, but his legs barely obeyed. Integrated meant everything. The gravity surged back to its earlier crushing level. His knees bent sharply. He caught himself just before falling, muscles screaming in protest. At the same time, the predator presence slammed into him, heavier and more focused than before. It no longer felt like something behind him. It felt like it was inside him, filling every empty space. Pain followed instantly, sharp and bright, lighting up his nerves like exposed wires. Elias cried out, unable to stop himself. The sound tore out of his chest, raw and hoarse. The crowd reacted as one, some recoiled, others leaned closer, and then the memories returned. Not one at a time, all at once. They crashed over him in a chaotic storm. Faces, voices, places, failures, successes, fear, pride, loss. Elias felt like he was drowning in his own life. He saw himself younger, making jokes to hide exhaustion. He saw himself older, quieter, carrying weight he never spoke about. He saw moments where he could have chosen comfort and didn't. Moments where he chose wrong anyway. The trial did not guide the memories now. It let them collide, letting his mind struggle to hold together. The emptiness from before lurked underneath it all like a wide open pit. His breath came in short, broken gasps. His chest hurt so badly it felt like something was tearing inside. He wanted to scream. He wanted to fall. He wanted it to stop. His body shook violently. On the council platform, one member tilted its head. "Collapse imminent," it said. Another replied, uncertain. "Observe further." Elia's vision dimmed again. The arena blurred. The crowd became a smear of color and sound. In that haze, a thought surfaced, simple and stubborn. This is too much. He almost laughed at it. Of course it was too much. That was the point. His mind began to slip. The memories lost shape, blending together. The pressure became a distant roar. For the first time since stepping onto the platform, Elias felt himself truly losing ground. His knees bent deeply. One hand twitched, instinctively reaching for balance. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Dr. Chen covered her mouth. Admiral Sato's hands clenched at her sides. Elia's hand hovered inches from the stone. If he touched it, if his knee hit the ground, the trial would register collapse. His species would be marked. In that frozen moment, something unexpected happened. The predator presence pushed harder, trying to force surrender. And it failed, not because Elias resisted, but because there was nothing left to take. He had already felt the worst parts of himself. He had already accepted them. The fear had no new shape to wear. The pain was still there, screaming and sharp, but it no longer carried meaning. It was sensation without command. Elia's fingers curled slowly, not to catch himself, but to pull his hand back. He straightened, shaking violently, every muscle protesting. He stayed upright. The platform's lights flickered. The voice stuttered for the first time. Warning. Subject neural pattern destabilized, recalculating. The gravity wavered, fluctuating unpredictably. The predator presence pulsed, uneven. The trial was straining. Elias felt the instability as a strange lightness, like standing on shifting ground. His balance wobbled, but he adjusted automatically, years of physical labor guiding his movements even now. He was beyond thinking. He was operating on habit, on staying. The council figure stood abruptly. "Cease escalation," it commanded. The platform did not stop. "Cease escalation," the figure repeated louder. The trial continued to push, systems locked into a sequence that had never been interrupted before. A sharp alarm sounded, low and deep, vibrating through the stone. The crowd erupted into noise again, no longer controlled curiosity but real reaction. "What is happening?" one observer demanded. "The trial is exceeding parameters," another replied. Elias barely heard any of it. His vision narrowed to a tunnel. At the center of it was the simple image of the circle beneath his feet. Stay inside. That was all that mattered. His body finally gave him a warning he could not ignore. A deep, tearing pain shot through his left leg, something strained, maybe damaged. He cried out again, his voice breaking. His weight shifted dangerously. For a heartbeat, it seemed impossible that he could recover. Then his right leg locked. His core tightened. He stayed standing even as his body screamed in protest. The trial platform let out a sharp tone. "System overload," it announced. "Threshold exceeded." The gravity cut abruptly. The predator presence vanished like a switch flipped off. The pain dropped from unbearable to merely terrible. Elias nearly collapsed from the sudden change. His body pitched forward, then back. He flailed for balance, barely keeping his feet under him. The circle beneath his feet glowed bright white. The arena lights flared. The trial platform lowered into the stone with a hiss of escaping energy. Elias stood there, gasping, swaying, no longer held up by force but by sheer will and instinct. The crowd was silent, not stunned silence, respectful silence. Elias' legs finally gave out. He fell to his knees inside the circle, hands slamming onto the stone. The impact sent a jolt of pain up his arms, but he barely noticed. He was still inside. He bent forward, forehead nearly touching the ground, breath coming in rough, shaking pulls. The platform's voice spoke again, different now, slower, careful. "Trial terminated." A ripple moved through the arena like a wave. The council figure stepped forward, its expression unreadable. "The human has not dominated the trial," it said. "The human has endured it beyond design." Another council member spoke, its voice tight. "This outcome has no classification." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some aliens spoke rapidly among themselves. Others stared at Elias like he was something new and unsettling. Dr. Chen collapsed into her seat, crying openly now. Admiral Sato let out a breath she had been holding for far too long. Elias stayed on his knees, head bowed, chest heaving. He felt empty and full at the same time. His body hurt everywhere. His mind felt raw, scraped thin. He did not feel victorious. He felt finished. Medical drones descended from the ceiling, sleek and quiet. They hovered near him, scanning, lights flickering across his body. The council figure raised a hand. "Do not remove him yet." The drones paused. The figure addressed Elias directly now. "Human," it said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Do you understand what has occurred?" Elias lifted his head slowly. His face was pale, streaked with sweat and tears. His eyes were bloodshot and unfocused. He shook his head slightly. "I stayed." A strange sound moved through the crowd, some kind of reaction that did not translate cleanly. The council figure tilted its head. "You were not designed for this trial." Elias let out a weak, humorless breath. "Neither was the trial," he murmured. The translator carried it. The council froze. For a long moment no one spoke. Then the figure straightened. "The conclave recognizes that the trial of strength has failed to measure the human species." A ripple of shock spread instantly. Failed. The word carried weight. The figure continued. "The human did not overpower, did not submit, did not break. The human adapted without resistance, endured without denial." It looked down at Elias. "Explain." Elias' head drooped again. He rested one hand on the stone, fingers spread, grounding himself. "There's nothing to explain," he said quietly. "This is just what we do." The council members exchanged looks. Their ancient assumptions cracked just slightly. One spoke softly. "Your species does not seek dominance." Elias shook his head. "Sometimes we do. Sometimes we shouldn't," he swallowed. "Mostly we just try to get through the day." The simplicity of it unsettled them. The crowd buzzed again, but now the sound carried uncertainty. The council figure raised both hands. "The trial will be suspended pending review." Suspended. Another word that had never been used before. The figure turned to the arena. "The human will be removed for medical care." The drones moved in immediately, extending supports beneath Elias' arms. He did not resist. He barely had the strength to register them. As they lifted him gently from the stone, the crowd watched in silence. No cheers, no jeers, only the quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted. As Elias was carried toward the exit, his head lolled slightly. He caught a glimpse of the vast chamber one last time. Thousands of alien eyes followed him, not with hunger or judgment, but with something closer to caution. He had not threatened them, and that frightened them more than any display of power. The gates closed behind him. Inside the private corridor, the noise faded. The gravity returned to normal. The lights were softer. Elias' body finally stopped fighting. The drones laid him gently on a medical platform. Dr. Chen was there instantly, hands hovering, eyes scanning readouts. "You did it," she whispered, voice shaking. Elias closed his eyes. "Is it over?" "For now," Admiral Sato said, stepping closer. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. "You changed the rules." Elias let out a weak breath that might have been a laugh. Wasn't trying to. He drifted in and out of awareness as the drones worked. His body ached deeply, but the crushing pressure was gone. The fear was gone. In the distance, through layers of walls and politics and ancient certainty, the conclave struggled to understand what it had seen. A trial meant to break strength had been outlasted, not by a warrior, not by a champion, but by a human who refused to stop. And for the first time in its long history, the galaxy did not know how to test what came next. Elias woke slowly. Not all at once, but in layers. First came sensation, soft pressure under his back, cool air on his skin. A steady hum, low and calm like a distant engine. Then sound, quiet voices, measured steps, the faint beeping of medical systems. Pain followed, but it was different now. Deep, dull, spread evenly through his body instead of sharp and overwhelming. The kind of pain that said something had been damaged but not destroyed. He opened his eyes. The ceiling above him was smooth and white, curved gently like the inside of a shell. Lights glowed softly along the edges, not bright enough to hurt. He lay on a medical bed, surrounded by hovering instruments that moved with careful precision. Dr. Chen sat beside him, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. When she saw his eyes open, she froze for half a second, then leaned forward quickly. "Elias," she said softly. "Don't try to move," he swallowed. His throat felt dry but not burning anymore. "Did I fall?" Her mouth trembled into a smile. "No," she said. "You stayed inside the circle." He closed his eyes for a moment, relief washing through him. When he opened them again, Admiral Sato stood at the foot of the bed. She looked the same as always, straight posture, calm expression, but something in her eyes had changed. "They're calling an emergency session," she said. "The entire conclave." Elias frowned weakly. "Because I broke something?" "You broke assumptions," she replied. The medical drones finished their scans and retreated slightly, lights dimming. One of them projected a small display into the air, filled with symbols Elias didn't understand. Dr. Chen studied it, nodding. "He'll recover," she said. "Slowly, muscle damage, neural fatigue, nothing permanent." Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Outside the medical chamber, the conclave was in chaos. For thousands of cycles, the trial of strength had been law. It had shaped borders, alliances, conquests. It was the foundation of how the galaxy measured worth. Now that foundation had cracked. Council members argued openly, voices sharp and urgent. Some demanded the trial be declared successful, the human labeled dangerous. Others insisted the result was invalid, the systems flawed. A few, quieter but growing in number, asked a different question. What if the trial was wrong? The pale blue council figure stood at the center of the chamber, listening. It had overseen more trials than any other. It had watched champions scream, submit, and break. It had never seen one endure by letting go. "The human did not dominate," one council member said. "It did not display superior force." "And yet the trial failed to end it," another replied. "That is dominance of a different kind." "The human body was near collapse," a third added. "It is fragile." "Yes," the blue figure said calmly, "and it continued anyway." Silence followed. That silence spread outward, carried by broadcasts and data streams across the conclave's reach. Other species watched the recordings. They saw the human shaking, bleeding, crying. They saw him nearly fall. And they saw him stay. Some were confused, some were disturbed. Some quietly felt something like hope. Back in the medical chamber, Elias slept again. When he woke the second time, more humans were there, diplomats, scientists, officers. None of them spoke loudly. They looked at him like he was fragile glass. He hated that. "Stop looking at me like that," he muttered. Dr. Chen laughed softly through tired eyes. "You scared them." "Good," he said. Then more seriously, "What happens now?" Admiral Sato exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen. "That's still being decided." The conclave requested a meeting. Not with Earth's leaders, with Elias. When Dr. Chen told him, Elias thought she was joking. "They want to talk to me?" he asked. "Why?" "Because you're the variable," she said. "The trial didn't know what to do with you, neither do they." He was moved carefully, escorted by both human security and conclave guards. This time, the guards kept their weapons lowered. The chamber he was brought into was smaller than the arena, quieter, more intimate. The council platform was gone. Instead, the members sat in a wide circle closer to the ground. The pale blue figure stood when Elias entered. "You may sit," it said. Elias lowered himself into a chair, moving slowly. Every motion still hurt. The figure studied him. "We have reviewed the trial data. Your species does not respond to our measures of strength." Elias shrugged faintly. We respond, just not the way you expect. Why? Another council member asked. Why endure without resistance? Why accept pain without surrender? Elias thought about it, really thought. Because fighting everything gets tiring, he said, and giving up doesn't make the pain stop, so we live with it. The council murmured among themselves. You understand, the blue figure said slowly, that many civilizations fear strength because it brings domination. Elias nodded. We know, we've done that to ourselves. That answer unsettled them more than any boast. The figure continued. If humans are not driven by dominance, what do they seek? Elias hesitated. Then he answered honestly. To keep going, to protect what we can. To help when things fall apart. Even when it hurts, the figure asked. Especially then, Elias said. Another silence fell, deeper this time. The blue figure straightened. The conclave has reached a decision. Elias' chest tightened slightly. The trial of strength will be suspended indefinitely, it announced. Its results will no longer determine a species' status. Shock rippled through the chamber. The human species will be recognized as autonomous equals, the figure continued. Not because of power, but because the trial failed to break them. Elias blinked. That's a big change? Yes, the figure said. Your endurance exposed a flaw in our understanding. Strength is not only the ability to impose will, it is the ability to persist without it. The council turned its attention fully to Elias. You did not conquer us, the figure said. You did not threaten us, and yet you forced us to reconsider everything. Elias shifted in his chair. I didn't mean to. That, the figure replied, may be the most concerning part. The meeting ended without ceremony. Across the galaxy, reactions followed fast. Some empires withdrew their fleets, reconsidering old plans. Others sent envoys to Earth, eager to understand this strange species that did not break under pressure. A few hardened regimes quietly archived the trial recordings and marked humanity as a problem to avoid. On Earth, the news spread slower, filtered through politics and translation. When the footage finally aired, people watched in silence. They saw a man who didn't look like a hero. They saw him suffer, they saw him stay. There were no cheers in the first broadcasts, no slogans, just a quiet pride. Elias returned to Earth weeks later. Recovery took time, physical therapy, long days, longer nights. He refused medals, he refused speeches, he went back to logistics. When asked why, he shrugged. Someone has to move things where they're needed. Months later, a new conclave initiative launched. Aid corridors, disaster response networks. Shared technology for rebuilding instead of conquering. Humans were invited to help design it, not because they were the strongest, but because they understood what it meant to endure. In the conclave archives, the trial of strength was reclassified. Its title was changed. Not publicly, just internally. It was no longer listed as a measure of dominance. It was listed as a warning. Strength does not always look like force. Sometimes it looks like a human standing in a circle, shaking, hurting, afraid, and not stopping. And across the galaxy, whenever pressure was applied, whenever fear was used as a tool, there was now a question that could not be ignored. What if they didn't flinch?